Hey, my name is Praise, and welcome to another art piece creation process in Photoshop. So the first things first, we do the background, and I will advise that you take a bit of time working on your background because it normally gives a certain feel to your finished piece. So while most people focus on the character and then do the backgrounds last, of late I've been looking at some artists. I'll put their links in the description. One of them is Sam Does Art. They tend to do their backgrounds first, then come do the characters because the backgrounds influence the characters. Once done with the background, I go to color blocking. Something I also learned from two artists. One whose name I cannot even pronounce, very hard to pronounce. The other one is Sam Does Art, but their names will be on the screen, or if not, then the links to the videos will be in the description. So the other thing I do after I've done the color blocking, I refine the color blocking, and most of the time I tend to use a skin tone color, which I'll not end up changing in my previous pieces. That's what I used to do, but in this piece I went with a color tone which they use from the video that I was watching, and that tends to be gray. Okay, so after that, the next thing that I will usually do is go put in other colors. Now I'll go deal with the hair, the clothing, and all that good stuff. But for this piece, what I was learning is trying to bring in some bit of anatomy from character design, understanding of principles. Okay, so with that being the case, I tried doing that off the top of my head and using the reference that I had of the piece, but I was like, this is not working. So what I ended up doing was I took like 5-10 minutes of the painting, did some research, went and looked at anatomical figures, downloaded some of them. Then once I had those as references, I came back into the piece, and that just goes on to stress how important references are. If you're trying to get an anatomy down to the T or to the best possible outcome that you will have, better to have a reference of anatomical figure. If you're going for a certain kind of feeling in an art piece, it's better to have the reference of whatever you're going for. So I got the references down, then came back, tried doing that, and I was actually quite happy with how this turned out once the references were there. It was much easier on my side because sometimes I tend to overthink when I'm doing this art, and if I do not have a reference, I won't move anywhere. Okay, if I don't have somewhere to base my art from, I tend to go on a wild goose chase and not get moving anywhere. So once I got the anatomy down roughly, I started implementing the idea in which I was learning. That's the idea of values. So the values help define the light and shadows, and tend to do definition for the texture of the skin of the characters that you're working on. So for this piece, I tried doing that, and from afar, if you look at the right side of your screen, what I have on the navigator, it tends to look very nice. That looks very nice, and as long as things tend to look very nice from afar, I will tend to go with it, because on the close-up is where I'll work on the details, and moreover, this was just like the first layer. After that, after you've done the values, there's also another layer that comes on top of the values. If you want to learn about this whole process, I'll leave the video in the description of the skill or the idea from where I got this from. I'll leave it in the description so you can go check it out. The teacher there teaches it better than I will have. Yeah, so you can go check it out, understand what the process there, whatever this is going, whatever I'm doing, and it will be better for your case. Yeah. So once I've done the value, added a bit of color to lighten up, bring out like the skin effect and the muscle beneath it with a bit of light and shadow here and there. Then the next thing is hue and saturation. Okay, this the first time I ever use hue and saturation. If you've been looking at my videos, I think the last 5 pieces I've used hue and saturation for a lot. I learned that firstly from Woloop. You can find it on Instagram. I'll also link his Instagram in the description, and it will also be on the screen. You can go check it out. Yeah, so that's where I first learned about it. Also about painting a bit of jewelry, so that you don't have to do all the detailed parts of the jewelry. Then the other person who did the same, taught me a bit about that, was Sam Does Art. Okay, and then the other part, and then now this specific channel, I believe is Digital Paint Studio. If I'm wrong, you can just check on the description. I will have left it there. You can check it out. They also do that very well. Okay, so it's hue and saturation. Then after that, doing the hue and saturation, you go on a layer below the value layer, which you had done when done all the hue and saturation. Then you try bringing the skin alive. For them, they tend to use the reds, so it tends to replicate the feeling of blood beneath the skin, which is actually a good idea. So once that is done, I now went tried doing the details, whereby I have the eyebrows, the eyelashes, I have the eyes, going and implementing the whites. And also for another thing I learned from Sam Does Arts, the eyes are not always white, so tend to go with a bit of gray. But because of the contrast of the surrounding colors, they tend to look quite all the same. So it's a really nice trick. Then I went did the hair, and finally the funny thing about this piece is, if you notice that these characters, both of them have elf ears. I thought that while I was drawing this, those ears were gonna pop and be like an attention grabber, but funnily enough, they didn't end up to being that in the final piece. And it was one of those things that whatever you wanted you don't meet the expectation that you expected it to meet, but the product tends to appear much better than you would have thought it would look like if the expectations were not met. So I actually like the piece without the ears being the main focus of attention. So it was just it was just like a subtle kind of piece, and I was happy with it. And so while I did the hair, a bit of shading here and there, then I added a new layer of it on top of that. Used the round soft brush on Photoshop, and then lowered the opacity and did a bit of touch-ups here and there to bring in the light, to show the light hitting the character in different sides. Then went ahead and did a bit of glitter on the lips from Sam Does Art, and then did a bit of jewelry to finish off the piece. So if you like this piece, I will really appreciate like the video and a subscribe. If you want to see more of my pieces, you can visit me on Instagram. The link will be on the screen or in the description. Yeah. Thank you. See you soon.